The high-end salon in the heart of the city was the epitome of luxury, gleaming marble floors, plush velvet chairs, and a soft hum of calm music that contrasted sharply with the chaotic bustle of the busy streets outside. Known for its elite clientele, it was a place where perfection was the only acceptable standard. The women who walked through its doors wore the latest fashion, their flawless hair and glowing skin creating an almost unreal atmosphere. But today, Emma didn't fit in. As she stepped through the polished glass doors, she immediately felt the eyes of the other customers and salon employees on her. Her hair was a mess, tangled and wild from the rain outside. Her clothes, though clean, were wrinkled, and her face lacked the glow the others had. She looked out of place, like a shadow among the bright lights. She hesitated as she made her way to the waiting area, feeling the weight of the whispered giggles behind her. The employees exchanged looks, whispering under their breath. "She doesn't belong here," one muttered. "What a mess," another scoffed. Emma sank into a chair, her heart racing, doing her best to ignore the cruel comments, though they stung deeply. Emma sat uncomfortably in the sleek chair, trying her best to blend in with the well-dressed women around her. The soft hum of the salon felt foreign, as though she didn't belong in this world of polished nails and perfect hair. Her heart raced, a sharp contrast to the calm atmosphere. She shifted in her seat, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, but it only made her feel more self-conscious. She had barely made it to the salon on time, running from one errand to another in a frantic rush. The morning had been a blur of phone calls, missed messages, and a deadline she could barely meet. The heavy rain outside hadn't helped either, making her late and drenched. Emma tried to remember the last time she had felt in control of her life, but it had been a while. Lately, it seemed like everything was slipping through her fingers. She had recently lost her job, the weight of mounting bills had her spiraling, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being stuck in a life that wasn't her own. As she sat there, she could feel the eyes of the salon staff on her. The whispers behind her back were loud enough for her to catch snippets of their conversation, even though she kept her head low. "She looks like someone who doesn't belong here," one of the stylists said, her voice dripping with judgment. "I mean, look at her. Messy hair, wrinkled clothes. This isn't the place for that." Emma's cheeks flushed, but she didn't respond. She couldn't let them see how deeply their words hurt. She'd spent so many years being judged by others, from friends to colleagues, and it still stung. She had tried so hard to push through the self-doubt, but moments like these, when it felt like the world was looking down on her, were the hardest to face. She stared ahead, pretending not to notice their condescending glances. It wasn't their opinion that mattered. She wasn't here for them. She had made this appointment for herself. Deep down, she knew she needed this moment of self-care, something, anything, to remind her she was still worth something, even if she didn't look like the women around her. The sharp click of her name echoed through the salon, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. She quickly rose from her seat, trying to steady her nerves as she walked toward the stylist who had called her. The tension in her chest tightened with each step, but she reminded herself that this was her moment, a chance to change, to feel something different. The stylist who greeted her was a tall, blonde woman with perfectly straight hair and a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'll be doing your hair today." Her tone was polite but distant, almost mechanical. Emma offered a nervous smile, trying not to focus on how out of place she felt. As Sarah led her to the chair, Emma couldn't help but notice the quick glance the stylist gave her clothes, wrinkled and a little damp from the rain. It was the kind of look that said everything without saying anything at all. The unspoken judgment hung in the air. Sarah began to run her fingers through Emma's tangled hair, her movements quick and somewhat impatient. "You've got a lot of knots here," she remarked, pulling the comb through with a little too much force. Emma winced but didn't say anything. It wasn't that she didn't know, she'd been too busy with her life to care about much else lately. As Sarah worked, Emma's mind wandered. The strange quiet of the salon, the whispers that still echoed in her ears, the weight of everything she had been dealing with. But for the first time in weeks, there was a flicker of something else, hope. Maybe it was the gentle hum of the blow-dryer, or the way Sarah's hands were starting to move more carefully as she straightened Emma's hair. Maybe it was the fact that someone was paying attention to her for more than just her messy appearance. The process wasn't just a makeover, it felt like a small, quiet reclaiming of herself. Sarah at first didn't seem to notice the change. She continued working in silence, focused on the task. But as she carefully styled Emma's hair, something in her expression began to shift. She stopped pulling so harshly, her fingers becoming gentler as she styled each strand with more attention. Emma couldn't help but notice how Sarah's demeanor was softening, the coldness melting away. By the time Sarah finished, Emma's hair was sleek, shiny, and effortlessly elegant. She barely recognized the woman in the mirror, her face seemed to glow with a quiet confidence she hadn't seen in ages. As she stood to admire her reflection, one of the other salon employees, a young woman with bright red lipstick, came over. She raised an eyebrow and looked Emma up and down before commenting, "Wow, you look great now. I mean, I didn't expect this." Her tone was a bit hesitant, but there was no mistaking the change in her voice. Emma glanced at her, unsure of what to say. "Thanks," she finally replied, her voice softer than she expected. She couldn't help but notice that the woman's smile seemed a little more genuine now, though still cautious. As Sarah stepped back, taking a moment to admire her work, she finally said, "You know, I've been doing this for years, but there's something about you, something different. I can't quite put my finger on it." Emma didn't reply immediately. Instead, she looked back at her reflection, taking in the woman staring back at her. She wasn't just a mess anymore, she was someone who had made it through despite the struggles, despite the judgment. Maybe it was the hair, or maybe it was something deeper, but she felt stronger. For the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to feel a small spark of pride. Just as Sarah finished the final touches on Emma's hair, a soft chime sounded from the door, signaling the entrance of someone new. The employees barely paid attention at first, too caught up in the transformation they had just witnessed. But then the room seemed to hold its breath as a figure stepped inside, the unmistakable presence of none other than Johnny Depp. It was as if time slowed down, the air shifted, and the usual hum of the salon stilled. Emma didn't even need to glance at the other clients or employees to know what was happening. The room had gone silent, every eye now on Johnny Depp as he casually walked through the door. His laid-back demeanor, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, contrasted sharply with the polished, pristine atmosphere of the salon. It was clear he wasn't here for a typical appointment. The employees, wide-eyed and gaping, whispered in a flurry of disbelief. "Is that really him?" one gasped. "It can't be," another murmured, taking a step closer to catch a better look. Some of them fumbled over their words, clearly starstruck, while a few attempted to sneak glances at the famous actor, unsure how to act around him. But Johnny seemed completely unaffected by the attention. He didn't even pause to glance at any of the employees. Instead, he made a beeline for Emma, a warm, genuine smile spreading across his face as he approached her. His eyes softened when he saw her, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. The tension she had been carrying melted away in an instant as Johnny stopped right in front of her. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice calm and friendly, the way someone would greet an old friend. "You're looking absolutely stunning today." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at him, unsure of what to say. "Johnny," she managed to say softly, her smile equally as warm. She hadn't expected him to show up, but his presence, his kindness, felt like a comforting anchor in the whirlwind that had suddenly enveloped her. The employees had stopped whispering at this point. One or two took a few cautious steps forward, but they were too stunned to speak. Johnny, however, was as relaxed as ever. He glanced around at the wide-eyed salon workers, their mouths open in shock, before he casually introduced Emma. "This," Johnny said, gesturing to Emma with an affectionate look in his eyes, "is Emma, my partner." He smiled as he saw the employees' surprised reactions. "I think you've all done a wonderful job with her hair today." There was an awkward, stunned silence as the employees processed his words. The realization hit them like a ton of bricks. The messy, disheveled woman they had so cruelly judged just moments ago wasn't some random middle-class customer. He wasn't just a messy woman who didn't belong in their high-end salon. She was Johnny Depp's partner, the same Johnny Depp they had been swooning over just moments earlier. The stylist Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her face going pale, her eyes darted nervously between Johnny and Emma. Her polite but distant demeanor had completely evaporated, replaced by a frantic rush to make things right. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice shaky as she looked at Emma. "I didn't mean. I didn't know." Another employee, a younger woman who had been particularly vocal earlier, quickly joined in, her face flushed with embarrassment. "We didn't know. I didn't realize," she muttered, her hands nervously twisting in front of her. The apologies started to flood in, each one more frantic than the last. "We didn't mean to judge," one of them said, voice trembling. "Please forgive us." Emma, however, stayed calm. She smiled faintly, the emotion in her eyes revealing no hint of bitterness. "It's okay," she said, her voice quiet yet firm, as she turned back to Johnny. "There's no need for apologies, it's not a big deal." Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the frantic, almost desperate tone of the employees who now surrounded her. Emma wasn't upset, she wasn't angry, there was no point in dwelling on their misplaced judgment. She had been through too much to let something like this shake her. Johnny chuckled softly, reaching out to place a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "She's right," he said, his voice light but filled with warmth. "You all did an excellent job. Thank you." The employees were left speechless, some of them still unable to hide the guilt written all over their faces. Emma's serene composure in the face of their apologies was a quiet reminder that judgment based on appearance meant nothing to someone who had found peace within herself. She had learned to rise above such things long ago, and that was something they would never understand from their brief interaction with her. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Johnny gave Emma a smile before turning back to the employees. "You all really have done a great job, and for the record," he added with a playful grin, "she's not just my partner, she's also a very talented artist." Emma's eyes softened at his words. The world may have judged her based on her appearance, but Johnny saw something far beyond that. She was more than the messy woman they had laughed at, she was someone with talent, with strength, and with a story that only those who truly knew her could appreciate. The employees were left to process the whirlwind of their own mistakes, but Emma stood there, calm, unshaken, her transformation now not just physical but emotional. And as Johnny took her hand and led her out of the salon, Emma finally realized that it didn't matter what others thought. She was enough, just as she was. As Johnny and Emma walked out of the salon, the employees still stood in stunned silence, unable to shake the impact of the revelation. The world they thought they knew had just shattered, and for a moment, they were left to reflect on their own judgments and mistakes. But as they moved through the door, and into the bright, bustling street, the weight of it all began to lift for Emma. Her hair, freshly styled, fluttered gently in the breeze, but it was the softness in her heart that truly felt renewed. Johnny, sensing her quiet contemplation, gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and comforting. Emma nodded, her smile faint but real. She appreciated his kindness more than he could ever know. For a moment they walked in silence, the city noise fading around them, until Johnny finally spoke again. "You know, I think today's a good day for you to share a bit more of your story," he said gently, his voice filled with a knowing warmth. Those people in there, they have no idea what you've been through." Emma looked up at him, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face. She had spent years trying to keep her past buried, not wanting to relive the pain that came with it. But Johnny's presence, his unwavering support, made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. So she took a deep breath and began to speak. "I wasn't always like this," she said quietly, her voice distant as memories flooded back. "There was a time when I was on top of the world, you know. I was an artist, an up-and-coming one at least. I had exhibitions, people were talking about me. I thought I had everything figured out." She paused, her gaze shifting to the sidewalk beneath her feet. But then, everything changed. Johnny stayed quiet, his hand never leaving hers, urging her to continue. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the past pressing against her chest. "I lost someone I loved, someone who meant everything to me. It It was sudden, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't know how to handle the grief. I thought I could keep going, but I couldn't. So I stepped away. I stopped painting, I stopped showing up, I disappeared from the public eye. Her voice broke slightly, but she quickly regained control. Johnny looked at her, his expression softening. And that's when I met you. I remember the first time we crossed paths. You were so humble, you didn't let your talent go to your head. You were grounded despite everything you had been through. He smiled warmly at the memory. I've never met anyone like you, Emma. You taught me so much about staying true to yourself, no matter the circumstances. Emma's eyes shimmered with emotion as she looked at Johnny. You're the one who taught me how to find peace again, she said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. You showed me that it was okay to let go of the past, to stop hiding, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm finally starting to see who I really am again. Johnny smiled, squeezing her hand a little tighter. You don't have to be anyone other than who you are, Emma. That's what makes you so incredible. You've been through more than anyone should have to endure, and yet here you are, strong, kind, and beautiful. The world just needs to see that. Emma let out a soft laugh, wiping away a tear that had slipped down her cheek. It's strange, she admitted, to have people look at me now and see something different. They don't know the struggles, the pain. But I guess I've learned that it's okay if they don't. What matters is how I see myself. She paused, her smile becoming more genuine. I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes. But I'm learning to embrace the journey, the highs and the lows, and I'm learning that even when the world doesn't understand, I don't have to let that define me. Johnny nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. And that's exactly why I love you, he said, his voice soft yet filled with conviction. You've never let anything break you completely. You've always risen above, even when you felt like the world was against you. That's true strength. Emma smiled, the weight of her past, now something she could look back on with acceptance, not shame. Thank you, Johnny, for reminding me of that. As they walked together, side by side, Emma finally felt the power of her own story, the strength she had carried through the darkness. The world may have seen her as messy, as lost, but in truth, Emma had always been more than what others could see. She was a woman who had learned to embrace her past, her flaws, and her triumphs. And that was something no one could take away from her. As Johnny and Emma stepped out of the salon, the room was left in a stunned silence. The employees stood there, their faces flushed with embarrassment, unsure of what to do. The realization of their hasty judgment weighed heavily on them. They had assumed so much about Emma based on her appearance, and in doing so they had completely missed the truth. After a moment of awkward silence, one of the employees, Sarah, took a deep breath and walked toward the exit. Emma, I am truly sorry for the way we treated you earlier, she said, her voice filled with sincerity. We had no idea who you were, please forgive us. The others quickly followed, murmuring apologies and offering similar expressions of regret. But Emma simply nodded, her demeanor as calm as ever. She didn't feel the need to make a scene or call attention to their mistakes. Instead, she offered them a small, understanding smile and said, "It's okay, we all make mistakes." Then, without another word, she walked out the door, her head held high. Johnny, however, stayed behind for a moment longer, his relaxed smile never faltering. He turned to the employees, his voice calm but firm. I just want to say thank you for the work you did on Emma's makeover. Despite your initial reactions, you all did a great job. She looks beautiful, inside and out. With that, he followed Emma out of the salon, leaving the employees to reflect on the lesson they had just learned. They had been so quick to judge someone based on their appearance, but the truth was, they had no idea who Emma truly was, who she had been. As the door closed behind them, the salon was left in silence, and a thought lingered in the air. It's easy to judge people based on what's visible at first glance, but it's the heart, the depth of a person, that truly matters. Emma had shown them that day the power of strength, humility, and grace. Though she had been overlooked by so many, Her story was a reminder that even the most underestimated people had the most incredible stories to tell. Thank you for watching this story about Emma's incredible journey of strength, grace, and self-empowerment. It's a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes the most beautiful stories are hidden behind the most unexpected faces. Emma's transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, showing us all that true beauty comes from within. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and share with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of Emma's story touched you the most? And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more amazing real-life stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.